Hello, my fellow board gamers, and welcome to the channel all about economic board games. Today I'm bringing you a run through of Power Grid. We've got the designer at the top there, and it's brought to you by these guys at the bottom. Now, if you're after a shorter video on this one, check out my overview from last week. Now, this is sort of on the top end of the medium slash heavier type complexity games. It plays 2 to 6 players, and today there's just myself as usual, sort of playing out a 2-player game. I would probably suggest playing this game with 4 players plus to really get the most out of it with sort of the auctions and what have you. And it says 2 hours, which is about right. Sometimes takes a little bit longer. And in this game, we are power companies, and we're trying to supply and provide energy to cities on the board that we'll be sort of building. You'll be buying resources to be able to power the power plants you'll be acquiring, and whoever can power the most power plants at the end of the game is the winner, not necessarily who has built the most cities across the game, or should I say not the most power plants. Whoever can provide power to the most cities is the winner. So let's sort of get into it. Then you've got this board here. You can see all these various cities across America. On the other side of this board there's a map of Germany as well, just to give you a bit of variety, and there's a host of various maps you can get available for this game. And you will literally let's just sort of dive in then. First thing we're going to be doing is determining turn order, and it's all kind of depicted on, or not depicted, but it's listed on this sort of turn order card here with this sort of calculator at the back, which helps you figure out your payments. So the first thing, turn order, you just randomly choose at the beginning on the first round. We've got yellow going first and red second. You're then buying a power plant, which is the crux of this game, the auction, and you can just about hopefully see all these in the camera view. So you got at the top here is the current market, and range from 3 to 6, always go in numerical order, and at the bottom 4 you got the future market, which will hopefully come into play at some point as these top ones are purchased. Now it says in player order, so yellow will be auctioning one of these top 4 to begin with. Now they've all got a host of numbers at the top, which is the opening bid. You can go high if you want, so they might go, I'm going to bid 3, but just gives you guidance as to what you're bidding on it. It'll show you the resources that are required to purchase to be able to power this power plant, and you can see how many cities that will hopefully power on the board, which will then give you payments and you get more money, and you can funnel it into, you know, spending more on auctions and getting more power plants, what have you. So that's kind of, you can see this one needs oil, this is coal, you've got a mixture of coal and oil, you've got garbage, and there's some uranium there as well. So there's 4 main resources in the game, which will kind of make a lot more sense when we get to this sort of purchasing of resources. So yellow are first, and they're gonna go for this one here, which is a combination of coal and oil, and their opening bid is 5. They could go higher, and it's going to power up to 1 city. Reds go, I'll go 10, yellow goes 12, and red says that's too steep for me, you can have it, yellow. So they plonk it in front of them. They pay their money to the bank. What do they go for? 12. And it then goes over to the next player. Now, it's a bit odd in a 2-player game, but with 4 players, this bidding becomes a lot more exciting and detrimental to the game. Yellows go up. Now, before you do that, you'd sort of put these in numerical order. You'd reveal the top one, which in this case is always a 13. It's sort of part of the setup. So you shuffle all these along. And again, you can see they're all in sort of numerical order. And reds are up, and they go, right, because they're the only remaining player in the auction, there's no one else to compete, because you can only win 1 power plant per round, and because yellow's already got one, reds have free will over to choose any of these top 4. So maybe they want to go for this number 7, and they'll only literally have to pay 7. But you can see how efficient this one is in comparison to their opponents. They've only paid 7 to get it. Yeah, they have to spend slightly more oil, but they haven't got the flexibility of doing oil and coal, which will become apparent soon, but it can power up to 2 cities. So they're going to go for this one, and that's going to cost them 7, and we then replenish the actual power plant market. So we reveal the top one, and it's a 20. So we pop these down here. Now you can see this future market hopefully gives you an idea of what might come out, and there's certain instances which will say on the turn order when certain ones are removed. So that was buying a power plant. Now I must add, each player must purchase one of those in the first round. From then on, you don't have to. You can only have a maximum of 3 of these in front of you. It's slightly different in a 2-player game. You can have 4. And I should add, looking at the rules, you can see, depending on player numbers, the number of regions you play in differs, number of cards you remove from the deck is different, number of power plants in front of you, as I say, it's 4 in a 2-player game, number of connected cities to trigger step 2. So there's 3 steps to the game. We're in step 1 at the moment, which basically means you can only go into each one of these cities once and pay the minimum price. As you get into step 2, which is normally triggered by the difference in, you can see the size of these cities. So once one player gets to 7, it triggers step 2, and then an opponent or a player can go in one of these cities as well. So you could have potentially 2 different players in one of these locations. You can't have the same player twice in one location, if that makes sense. And it says the number of connected cities to trigger game end is 21 in a 2-player game. Normally, you can see it goes in a 6-player game to 14, so sort of helps keep the length of the game. That's sort of similar, I'd imagine. So we've done the buying power plants. Where are we? Each may buy only 1 power plant. Yeah, it says in here. So we're next going to buying raw materials in reverse player order. So it's going to be red up first. Now it says you can have a maximum of double input per power plant, which I'll explain now. So red's at first. Now looking at their card, they can buy oil to power this factory. Oil currently in the market, you can see it's in this little category here of a value of 3. So each unit in here is going to cost you 3. So let's just say they take all 3 of these at 9. Double capacity basically means you could buy another 3 or another 1 or 2 or 3 and put them on in reserve to power this in the future. Now that's important because the prices might be too desirable now to get them. You want to get them in stock before an opponent, for example, these guys might purchase the oil as well. So you're making it gradually more expensive for them. You might be plush on money now and decide to do that. So it's kind of this demand and supply on the market as you go through the game. So they're going to buy another 3 as well to kind of demonstrate that. So those were going to cost 9. 3 times the 4 is 12. That's 21 in total for raw materials. Now you can see over to this player. Now just should add, you can't buy garbage and put it on here. It has to match the actual required resources at the bottom. And again, you can't go over that double occupancy. These guys then are thinking, right, I ain't buying oil because that's now valued at 5, but they have the flexibility to go for coal, which is only priced at 1. So they're going to do that, and they're going to double up on occupancy, capacity, should I say. So they got the 4, which is fine. They paid 3 times the 1 for that and a 2 for that. So that is 5 if my maths is right. And all this money goes to the bank. So that was literally raw materials. We then go on to building in reverse player order again, which is red to begin with. So let's just say red go for this green section here. You can see you've got all these different cities and they're connected by these pipes. They're going to go for Savannah. They're going to pay the 10 to locate there, to build that, to help build that city and get their network supply on the go. And they paid 10 for that. They could build as many as they want if they can afford it. And the way it'd work is you go adjacent to one of yours. So you could pay the 7, which is the network cost, and they could go into this location here and pay 10 again. So a combination of 7 plus the 10 is 17, and they've only got 12 left, so they're going to hold off on that one. Well, saying that, they could, their capability on their factories to provide power to 2 locations, and it can be wasteful just spending the free oil to do it on 1. So let's see if they can figure something out. Yes, they could go in Jacksonville, which you can see is connected and it hasn't got any network costs. That's going to cost them 10 to do so. So that's a must, really. There we are. So they've only got 2 bucks or electro left. Over 2 yellows then. So they're going to a different area to start off with. Let's say they go into this place. Going to cost them 10. And they've got a fair bit of money, but they can only currently produce enough energy for 1 city. So they're going to keep their cash at the moment, give them a bit more power during the auction phase and potentially buying raw materials, what have you. So we have literally done building. And as you build something, you kind of have to keep an eye on when you head into step 2. But it lets all the players understand where people are in the game. So red has built 2 cities, so they go up 2, yellow's on 1, and that will dictate who goes in player order on the next round. We are over to bureaucracy, which is step 5. So first thing you do is going to get money. Now on the back of this actual card here, starting with, well, it's you can all go at the same time, so there's no sort of player order to this. So let's just go with red first. They don't have to, but it's probably advantageous to actually do this, they're going to spend these free oil, goes back to the supply, not the market, that gets replenished separately. And these free oil can power up to 2 cities. They have got 2 cities to provide power to. And you look on this little matrix, 2 cities powered is going to give them 30 free money from the bank. And yellows in this case can only provide power to the 1, and that's fine. They've only got the 1, so they spend this 2 coal. And you can see again 2 is well, 1 should I say, is going to give them 22. So already the reds have gained 10 more in revenue by providing electricity. Now, on this card, you can see it's a big leap up. Even if you don't power anything, you're going to get 10 electro to kind of keep you in the game. And it goes up to 22, 33, 44. So initially, there's some big increases in revenue. But as you get later on in the game, you can see the difference between, say, 15 cities and 16 powering them is from 134 to 138. So a difference of 4. So you have to be really mindful as how much you're going to be spending on certain factories to provide cheaper or more efficient fuel, how much you're going to be spending on these resources to maybe diversify as to what power you're using from your opponents. So you really have to take all that into consideration, which is really brings in the nice elements of the economic aspects of this game. So that was get money. In step 1 and 2, you place the highest power plant under the stack. So number 20 here is going to go. Now at the beginning of the game, the bottom card is this step 3. So step 1 is what you're playing. Step 2 is usually once you get to this number 7, but it's number 10 in a 2-player game. But so basically once 10 cities are built in a 2-player game, you trigger step 2, and that basically means that now you can enter the same city as an opponent, but this time you're paying 15. And in this case, this card is going to go below the bottom of the deck. Now when step 3 is revealed, that triggers the last step. Not the end of the game necessarily, but it means you take all the cards from the bottom that had been placed under there. They all come into play. You kind of form an auction area of 6 cards. You carry on playing, and once the game end is triggered by someone building, in this case 21 cities in a 2-player game, it's kind of more competitive in a 4+ game because I think it's 17, and that means that you could potentially build more than what's needed to trigger the game end. And it's an interesting way because at the end, let's just say, I'll put these back, but yellow, well, obviously in a 2-player game, it would be up here, wouldn't it? Let's say red triggers game end. They've got 21. You play out the rounds. It's who can power the most cities. So even though yellow's only built 19 cities, if red can only power 18 of those 21 and yellow can power 19 of 19, yellow will win the game. So you have to be really balanced as to what resources you've got to be able to actually power those at that particular time. Where we red had 2, yellow had 1. You can always sort of check at the end of the round to make sure that is adding up. Where we said we've taken the top one, we're going to add another one, literally another high number there, 31. And in step 3, when you finally get to that, you would remove the lowest power plant from the game. And then we go to restocking the raw materials. And at the back of the rules is a great guide as to, 2-player game. In step 1, we're going to be adding free coal. And you can see it's got cheaper again. Now, if there's no resource in the market, you don't fill it because, as you can see, these guys have got those remaining resources there. Oil is 2, so no, yeah, that's fine. You got garbage at 1, and you got uranium at 1 as well. And you can see uranium's sort of slightly more, well, a lot more expensive. Starts at 16, 14 and 12 to buy. Isn't actually any uranium factories out there, and it gradually, you can see the red spot on each of these will get cheaper. So it's kind of diversifying which factories you go in. If your opponent's all going for oil, maybe you want to consider one of these sort of more expensive resources for the garbage, but gradually, it'll pay off eventually, hopefully, depending on how much you paid in the auction. So that's kind of the bureaucracy. Now, I should add something to note is that when, say, red player gets to build 3 cities, any card out here still in the market which has equal or lower value 3 would just get discarded, and you draw the top one and sort of go numerical order again on the market there. So it kind of helps keep this fresh, and there's not these inefficient power factories out there that are just sort of clogging up, and it keeps the deck flowing nicely because you kind of need it to if you're going to be getting to the bottom for step 3 there. And literally we go through it again. So I'm not going to do much more, but I'll just go one more play through this sort of turn order. So determine turn order is literally whoever has the most cities. So this is going to swap. Red has the most of their buying power plants over to in player order, so it's going to be red this time that chooses. And let's just say they go for this number 8. The bidding happens, red happens to win it. They pay their money to the bank. Now they've got 2 now. Now in a 2-player game, you can have 4 of these, and normally it's free in most other player accounts. If you do decide to buy more power plants, you can just swap them in and out. As long as the resource matches, you can swap them over as well. And we've replenished. We've got a 32. So let's push this number 9 in here. Now, looking at some of these, you can see this is a renewable energy one, a little windmill. You can see you don't need any resources, which is great because you don't have to worry about the diplomacy of the politics of buying those, but it only powers the one. Now, as you get through this deck, let's just show you some more. 1 oil can power up to 5 cities. Crazy, but a minimum bid of 35. Uranium's out here, 1 uranium for 5. This one's some kind of nuclear power station, $50, but you can see you don't need any resources and it can power 6. So you can see you're going to need a combination of these, some big ones to be able to power those sort of 17, 18, 19 cities at the end of the game. So we do the auction again, and you don't necessarily, other than the first round, you have to buy one of these factories. You don't have to participate in the auction. You can pass, and or you could just make other people's life difficult by bidding up auctions, so they're paying over the odds. Raw materials, again, you're just buying these from the market at the bottom. Building, you're expanding out. Now, you could hypothetically, let's just say yellow here, doesn't want to build in St. Louis because their opponents built there and they're not in step 2. You could pay the cost here, the network cost of 12, skip over this one, go in any direction. So let's say they want to get to Kansas City. They pay the next additional network cost, so 12 puts the 6 is 18, and then they can put one of their buildings in Kansas at the value of 10. So you can see how you can spread out, but it's costly. So you want to be thinking as efficiently as you can in an area where you can get the cheapest network cost and really quickly take advantage of these 10s as best as you can. And then you go back to bureaucracy, you get your money, and literally that is providing you the capital to be able to buy more efficient power plants and get the resources, and so on and so on. And again, triggering game end, step 3, sometimes it's very rare, but it can happen in step 2, I guess, is literally whoever's built up to the requirement needed to trigger the game end on here, let's say 21 in a 2-player game, and whoever can power the most cities, not own the most cities, will win the game. There we are, folks. That is Power Grid.